writer-director Morgan Ignari, producer Candice Kuwahara, and actress Molly Bernard, who is from the amazing television show Younger, which I have been obsessed with for years. So I'm so excited to get to talk. This film does such a great job of like tiptoeing on either side of like comedy and drama. It must have been very difficult to kind of approach the film and make sure you were hitting the right emotion for the right scene, and to not go too far one way or another. Because, you know, there's times in this film and, you know, we don't quite like Molly's character. You know, she doesn't come out to be like the greatest person all the time.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that was, thankfully, Molly and I got to have some rehearsal time before we shot, and she had done so much homework in marking out the beats of where were the jokes, where is there less levity. And I mean, I think her chops as a comedic actress, like the movie would have been completely impossible without them, because we really need to buy this like wild vacillation between earnestness and, you know, jokes that are played as jokes. So the rehearsal was so helpful. And the fact that I think Candice and our DP Maria knew the script so well, like if I ever was, because the scenes are long, I think that was the hardest part in terms of the tone between comedy and drama, was these long takes and a lot of choreography and making sure that we were nailing those beats. So I think everyone's familiarity with the script and ease of working together, like it was so nice to have so many people to check in with and be like, is this hitting the way that it should?
Molly, how did you feel in the moment, you know, trying to hit the points of this character and like playing someone who, you know, starts off with the best of intentions and ends up in a pretty dark place?
You know, I guess without sounding pretentious in any way, but in my graduate school training in Shakespeare, we were taught that any great script is a map that it is your responsibility to follow, and to that end, essentially, if you get on that train and follow the track that it's on, and don't try too much to make it swing your way, but trust that the writing is doing its job. And then, you know, when you're on a set, it's like you have to trust that everyone else is doing their job. So I think it was an act of, I really trusted the script and I trusted every human in that room. Least of all myself. I think Candice and Morgan really, unfortunately, sometimes we're like, oh, dang, it's hard to carry a film. It was my first time, but I really had to trust that the script was doing its work, and I followed the argument. You know, Milo is really fucking smart, and she's complicated and makes huge, ugly mistakes and really unattractive, unglamorous, selfish decisions. But that was the train, and it was honestly a beautiful ride to be on. It, I respected it. I respected her. I respected the ride, and it was. I guess that's to answer your question. That's how.
What got you excited about the script? How did you come to it?
I one day got this beautiful email from my team saying, this woman, Morgan Ignari, wants you for this movie. And I was like, wait, what? I'm just like a comedy TV actress. I really wanted to do independent film, and I really wanted to do something that felt like, or that I would classify as an impossible project. And this script, every page just felt impossible, and it felt gorgeous. I mean, it's one thing to watch the film. It's a really wonderful experience to watch the film. But reading it's gorgeous, and it's long. These scenes are long. The dialogue is long. It felt like this is a hurdle, almost probably a once in a lifetime experience. And I felt called. I felt like how nice it is to be offered a film in that way, but actually it was an invitation to join these other women in making this film, and it just felt undeniable. It was not, and I think all three of us, it was like the opposite of a vanity project. I think we shot in 21
Yeah.
days. We shot in the middle of the night, most of our night shoots, many a meltdown. I mean, it was a labor of love, and it
Yeah.
was just a beautiful, in that way, like a wonderful independent film experience.
Morgan, how did you know that Molly was the right person to play Milo?
So when I wrote the script initially, I don't think I would have conceived of Molly necessarily as Milo. And then a friend was like, you need to check out this actress, Molly Bernard. Her like ability to profoundly get drama, get comedy is like really special. And I completely fell in love with her performances on Younger and Transparent, and ended up starting to reconceptualize Milo in a much more interesting and cool way. And like, that's the gift of having an amazing actress to work with. Is I think Milo was a little bit more two-dimensional when I initially wrote the role. She was like a little bit more confrontational and brash and like kind of like fuck everyone. And Molly really brought this like vulnerability to it. And she's like kind of a fast talking, like quippy, like I saw her heart so much more. And I think that made me really, really excited about thinking about this character in a way that I had not even yet. But yeah, Molly was our first offer. She was absolutely who we wanted to play Milo.
Candace,
That's
how did
so
you get
nice.
involved in the how did you get involved in the film, and what were you excited about when you read it?
Very similar to Molly, I got a very wonderful email one day. Morgan and I went to college together, and we were roommates and friends, but we had never actually worked together before this movie. And she just emailed me and said, hey, I have a script. I want to make this. Are you interested in coming on as a producer? And I read the script and very much fell in love with it. I think it's a story that a lot of people need to see, and it resonates with a lot of people who are trying to create families right now. So yeah, I think it has a very important message.
It's interesting that this is a story that is about so much about queer culture and about, you know, queer people, and yet the choice of the lens to see it through is from someone who's straight, which I think
Yep.
is actually really interesting. And she has this sort of desire to live in this world
Yep.
that, you know, that she's not a part of. Can you talk a little bit about writing from that perspective and what you were aiming for?
Yeah, totally. So I toyed with making Milo queer, more overtly queer, and I ended up deciding against it because I felt like part of what sold her decision for me is that, like, I feel like if you are queer, you have inherently done a lot more thinking about how you're going to need to jump through hoops to create a family. Like, it's not a given that you're just going to be able to have biological children, which of course it isn't for heterosexual people either, but I think there's a lot less necessary thinking about that. And so I thought that lended credibility to the fact that Milo wouldn't have necessarily put a lot of thought into this from the outset. And I also thought that Milo's kind of sometimes overt, sometimes more subtle, like tokenization of her friends, or like she really wants to be included in this world, and because so many of her friends are queer. And I thought that provided a like fertile ground for seeing conflict here, when she kind of assumes that she has like a pass or access, and her friends like finally start to call her out on it and are like, you know, when she gets in her fight with Noir in her room, and she's basically like, I thought you'd think I was like doing this amazing thing, and Noir's like, because I'm gay, like I don't, what? And also in her kind of casting aside of George's relationship, which I don't think is necessarily because he's gay, but I think she's not even sensitive to the fact that could be how it comes across. So I thought that her being at least heterosexual presenting in the movie was a good conflict point against a lot of these queer people in her life, who are also have a lot more kind of validity in being like, how have you not considered the like magnitude of what you're doing?
Yeah, I think it'd be a very different film if that wasn't true, because just the relationship she would have had with her friends and what she could have talked about ahead of time to prepare.
Totally.
Molly, what did you feel about playing this role as sort of a lens for the audience to view this world?
You know, I identified with her basically before I met my partner, Hannah. I was like the gayest straight person you ever met. So I really understood Milo's need to belong, kind of firm belief that she belongs, and her blind sight, like her blind spots, excuse me, to fetishizing her friends and her like basically chosen family.
Mm-hmm.
Because even if your chosen family is all queer, and you know, if those who you surround yourself with are queer, if you are hetero, you are not oppressed in the same way, and your lens is a little different. So I think it's a really interesting question that you asked that we haven't been asked yet, and I think each time I watch the film or talk about the film, I learn about these choices that Morgan made that I was not aware of while we were making the film. Like, I just, you know, I played Milo. Milo is straight. She likes boys. Her best friends are gay. Her parents are dead. And so it's like in the analysis of the film, I learn how smart these choices were. And I do think that Milo being super open and super accepting of the queer community is one thing, but the underbelly of a slight homophobia is also quite internalized, as it may be, which even I, as a formerly straight person, or I guess bisexual person, I don't know, I'm marrying a woman, I am what I am, but like I identify with that too. So that that lens, that story is really important to examine the opaque nuances of like the spectrum of acceptance of queer identity and queer representation.
Yeah. And I also think to that point, it also, beyond having not thought about the intricacies of parenting in queer relationships and creating children in queer relationships, I think the fact that Roger is like gay and runs a drag club and like I think she thinks that's cool, and also is like, I can help you, which is so naive and also like kind of condescending and
homophobic, I think.
Yeah,
in an aggressive way, to just be frank. Yeah,
completely. And I don't think if Roger wasn't gay, like I don't think Milo ever would have considered doing this, you know. And
I agree.
You know, has lots of facets to that itself, but yeah, I think so much of writing this was like, how can I sell this insane decision that both of them make, barely knowing each other? And I had to kind of answer that question separately for Milo and for Roger. And for Milo, I was like, I think she's got to be really seduced by this like access point into the queer community and someone who's like really embedded in it.
You know, that's always a point for me when I ask a question that no one's asked you before.
Yeah, totally. No, it's a great question. Thanks for asking.
We have a question here from Mary, who's listening in the Q&A, and she was wondering about the choice to make Milo's mother having died by suicide and where that came in. And, you know, I'd be curious how you think that affected her choices as a character.
Totally. I mean, that was a little bit of the working in of the Anne Sexton stuff. And I kind of knew that Milo's parents couldn't be in the picture in the movie. Like, we just didn't have a time to have like a parental relationship factor in. And I also thought that having Milo's mom die by killing herself, and also in such a traumatic way, Milo is so sensitive to being perceived as crazy or being perceived as rash, even though the choices she's making are rash. like Molly made a great point when we started working together that like Milo's not like flying by the seat of her pants. Like she has like an internal calculus to the decisions she's making. Like she thinks that these are decisions that make sense and are good and are productive. And so she really, it's really a tender spot for her if anyone accuses her of being crazy. And I thought that tie-in with a parent who dealt with severe mental health problems, severe depression, it made sense that would be such a sticking point for her, and also would make sense that she had been driven to her friends as a found family, and also that her friends, because George and Nora are her friends from childhood or high school at least, that I think they let her get away with a lot because she had suffered such trauma and they knew how important they were to her as her family, as her support system. I thought that I could buy a little bit more that they would kind of coddle her or like, you know, roll their eyes and not really address some of her more problematic behavior. What did you think about it, Molly?
Oh, I could just listen to you talk. I know, it's like, dang, that was so fun. I feel honestly not different to what you were saying, or not so different. I feel the internal experience of entering Milo's kind of psyche. I think the fear that she experiences on a daily basis is that like she is her mother or will be her mother, and the need to be accepted by Nor and George, and then that she kind of imposes on Roger is she's making all of her decisions because she was orphaned. It is just one of the many layers that had to be working in order to justify a lot of Milo's choices.
And you and I talked about, like, I think Milo's driving thing is that she needs to be the most important person in someone's life. And I think to have a parent take their own life, obviously it is so much deeper than like, you know, my family wasn't important enough for me to stick around. Mental health is so much more complicated than that. Suicide is so much more complicated than that. But to a child, I think that can be a very real like manifestation of grief and trauma of like, was I not enough to get through this, to get past it? And when you suffer something that's that profound, like it really drives a lot of Milo's absolute need to be the most important person to someone else in her life, which she completely projects onto Roger.
Absolutely. And she gives him this opportunity that is truly selfishly for her to be treasured.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah, and I was thinking that another thing that's going on too is that she has sort of this, she's caught in this sort of time of her life where it's that, I don't know, I see it as a millennial need to do something important. Like, look at the thing that I've done that says that I've arrived as an adult and I'm contributing to society. So to me, like, you know, it wasn't just that she was giving a gift to, you know, all of her queer friends by having this baby, but also having a baby for someone else has this connotation that she thought like, oh, she should be praised for that. And it didn't actually have the effect that she was hoping.
Completely.
You know, I'm just saying, I'm just thinking about her age and her relationships with her friends and where they are in her life and where she is in her life. Did you, how do you think that played into her choices?
I definitely, in terms of the fact that Nor is settling down, and I think there's this dynamic with Nor where Nor, in my mind, has always been perceived as like the more together with it successful one. And even though she doesn't actively try to make Milo feel like a child or infantilize her, that's definitely a part of their dynamic. Sometimes because Milo is making kind of inconceivable decisions to Nor. So I feel like that kind of tension of Milo being like, I can do anything you can do, like I'm not the kid and you're not the parent, we're equal friends, played into it. Yeah, I think that was a big part of it. And when we started casting, you know, like there's just such a wide net. Our casting director, Matt Glassner, was amazing, but you cast a wide net in terms of actresses, and because we had no idea if Molly was going to be able to take on the project. And, you know, some of those names on the list were like 23, 24, 25-year-olds. And I was just like, we cannot do that. Like, we can't have an element of this that is Roger taking advantage of this like very young
person.
recent college graduate, or else like the power dynamic is going to be so wacky. So it was pretty important to me that Milo be young enough that she could be believably naive about all of the things that come with having a baby, but old enough that Roger didn't seem like, you know, any more predatory than I think strikes a balance in the movie.
I actually think it felt more like Milo was taking advantage of Roger.
I agree.
Yeah.
I love the end of the film and that sort of bittersweet moment when they see each other out in public. What did that moment mean, Molly, for Milo, and what do you think that the future relationship might hold?
You know, I love that moment too, and I love it, especially because it's a quiet ending to the film, and in some ways it's unexpected, and it cuts in a deeper. It's this kind of brilliant structure of the film that, like, is this a comedy? Is it a drama? What it's, you feel a little off balance, and that's my kind of tea I'd like to drink every day. But it I think really what it means, Milo doesn't get what she wants when she's talking in the scene about what the role she'll play, some kind of non-denominational godparent, or how she wants to be involved in this baby's life. And I think it offers her what I'm assuming is, after that scene ends, is probably a world of, maybe she goes to therapy, right? Like, and she journals and makes choices with her friends and in her life that are less urgently narcissistic.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't see her not being in their life. I just think probably not anytime soon.
Mm-hmm.
What about the Morgan? What about having the child for Roger enabled her to get to the next level where she could perform live again? You know, and, what is the connection between those two activities? Because they're both about kind of creation, but
yeah.
and
no,
like
really
I was thinking about sharing with somebody. So when you could share a song with an audience, you could share a baby.
I think having like that, there's like a 10-minute sequence in the movie where she just kind of loses every single person in her life. Like like Roger, George, and Noor kind of all disappear very quickly in like the time of the movie. And I think it's like a real like raising of who she thought she was to these people. And I think she really does reckon with kind of some of her demons or her lesser qualities. And she genuinely does have few moments of honest self-reflection. So I feel like so much of her reticence to perform is wrapped up in a lot of self-consciousness, a lot of, if I'm not going to be the best at something, then what's the point in even doing it? And I think that the like harshness of the self-reflection that is finally imposed upon her makes it lessen a little bit in the scariness of it. And I also think that she's been, in the fact that she's forced herself to be, she's been so defined by other people for the entire length of the movie, and probably for her whole life. This is the first time she's actually kind of on her own, and which I think is kind of freeing for her to do something that is actually for herself, and that is actually pushing herself out of her comfort zone in a way that having a baby for Roger, maybe she convinced herself that that's why she was doing it, but that was disingenuous.
Getting near the end here of the Q&A, so I guess I want to make sure that we learn a little bit more about what the next steps are for this film. Where are you in the process? Are you still playing festivals after this, or what's the distribution plan?
Yeah, I mean, Candace, you can touch on it a little bit if you want to.
Yeah, we're playing in a bunch of festivals coming up this fall. I think, do you remember what our next one is?
We're doing Provincetown, Woodstock, and Dances with Film in Atlanta in pretty rapid succession.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of like September, October date ranges. And then we have a sales agent that we're working with, but still sort of pending on a distributor right now.
I love Dances with Films. It's a fun festival to be at. So hopefully,
Yeah.
is that going to be another? I guess it's going to be virtual.
Oh, nothing's in person.
That's so sad. Yeah.
I know it is.
I
It's a
know.
big bummer.
Did you get to go to any festivals before with the film, or is this?
No, our opening weekend was supposed to be at Brooklyn and then Atlanta, and that was like the last weekend of like it was beginning of April. Like it was. Yeah, it's a big bummer. I mean, I think luckily with so much going on in the world, it puts into perspective like the bummer of not being able to go to film festivals versus like the magnitude of much more important things. But sure, selfishly for, I'm sure the three of us and the rest of our team, it's a bummer to not get to experience those things in person.
Certainly.
Yeah. Molly, I just have to ask, since I have you here, when do you go back to shooting more younger?
Oh yeah. We have a couple of tentative dates, a date this fall, and if we are not able to do that, we will try for next spring.
I really think that Milo's story would make an excellent book for Millennial to release.
Honestly, I completely agree. Although Milo, like the like IRL version that Morgan created of Milo, if we were to transpose it into Darren Star's younger, she'd have to be she'd have to be really turned up, really, really, really dialed up version of Milo. Like I'm talking like black eyeliner, like tons of black eyeliner, like down, like long stringy hair, and like she wears like netting.
It's always netting.
Always netting. And like I think she's also an anarchist in that version. So.
Yeah. Like that one shirt that you're wearing in Milkwater kind of inexplicably that laces down the entire time.
Absolutely.
When you're like 7 months pregnant. I was like, you rock that, Milo.
She works at a guitar shop. She's gonna wear some gnarly stuff. It's pretty good for her.
Those are the biggest losers that have ever worked at a guitar shop too.
Oh my God.
That was really interesting.
I
remember growing up, I always thought the people who worked at guitar shops and music shops were like the coolest people. And it's like, no, they're not.
No.
I know. Humbling.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us for the Q&A and for being a part of aGLIFF. We really appreciate the chance to show your film and to share it with the audience. And it'll be available for the rest of the festival, and people will be able to watch this Q&A even now that they weren't here live. Now that it's recorded, it will live forever.
Awesome.
So good. Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you so much. This is great.
All right.
Please send me the link so I can post it on my Instagram.
Will do.
Oh, awesome.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Stay safe.
Bye-bye.